because our bodies don't lie. What we feel doesn't lie. Our minds can make up all sorts of bullshit, but our body is the one barometer that we can count on. And so I would say especially for people who are new to ideas about the spiritual realms, and they really feel that it's truth, but their mind is arguing with them, and maybe the people around them are questioning their sanity or whatever it is, leaning into how that feels.
I love the fact that people are more willing to share their experiences and talk about this and let people know, like, no, there's a whole community out here for you. You don't have to do this alone. We're all actually feeling these energies, so you're not crazy either.
Exactly. It's so important, and it's so beautiful to watch when people realize, wow, okay, like you said, I'm not crazy. Because really a lot of people do think that they are going insane, that they're losing their minds.
Oh, if I accidentally open a portal while bored, it's on you, aren't it?
Then prepare yourself. Signal incoming. Incoming transmission. Emotional resonance detected at level 9. Heart frequency stable. Vessel identified. The harmonic rising. This is no ordinary craft. It's a living instrument, tuned to the vibration of love, grief, and awakening. Jen Madrone has arrived, carrier of codes, transmuter of trauma, and cartographer of consciousness. Please adjust your frequency accordingly. She does not heal with words alone. She heals with presence.
Hello, this is Captain LA of the Ether Voyager. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you for joining me. One thing I like to do when I meet other cosmic travelers amongst the stars is play a little game. And so we have the Cosmic Wheel of Wisdom.
All right, let's play.
And so we spin the wheel, and let's see where it lands. The cosmic share my screen. What's the best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Ooh, good question. Best piece of wisdom I've ever received. To let it go. And that came from a red-tailed hawk who told me just to let that shit go. And that was definitely the best wisdom and the most impactful message, especially coming from that messenger. Simple and to the point.
I think that is the best thing we can do, right? Just let things go.
Absolutely.
I definitely am known to be someone who likes to cycle through things a lot. I guess that's like my Buddhist principles that I didn't even know I had in my entire life. But yeah, I used to get a lot of flack for it because they're just like, okay, you're like constantly cycling through everything, people, places, and things. And I'm like, hey, if it's not aligning, then let's move on.
Yeah. Stagnancy is where we find the most suffering, and continuing to move forward is more fun, really. A lot more fun.
That's what I found. So the first thing I want to ask you is, actually, I've been enjoying your book.
Oh, good.
And I want to know what inspired you to write this book.
All right, great question. And I'll try to give you the short version of that answer, because there was a lot of inspiration that led up to the moment of beginning to write this book. And I would say it really is a result of the work that I have done over many, many years with people going through the really messy, crazy, hard parts of the awakening process. And through a series of events, before COVID started, I was led to start working online in the online community with people going through the awakening process. And as COVID happened and we were all forced inside, it became clear why I was supposed to do this work. And I worked with people all over the country, some in other countries, who were going through the awakening process and didn't have anyone else to talk to. They didn't understand. A lot of them had no idea what was happening. And so I compiled a whole lot of information, content through my work, through my own experiences, going through the awakening process many, many years ago, and then continuing up until today and through tomorrow and the next day. And when we came out of COVID at the other side, I was pretty tired of working on Zoom. I was ready to go back to working in person with my healing arts practice that I have. But I wanted to put all the information into one place. And, years ago when I started doing this work, one of my clients was like, you need to put this in a book. And I kind of laughed because I never thought that I'd write a book. And he just kept bugging me. He would tease me. Every time we would meet, he'd be like, how's your book coming? And, I would laugh, but he planted the seed. And so years later, I was like, okay, it's time, and Spirit was pushing me and saying, it's time to put this all into a book and put it out there so that as many people have access to it as possible. And so from there, Uprising was born. And it really is a user's manual for the spiritual awakening process. And I would say the modern spiritual awakening process, because the way that it's happening right now, isn't anything like it was for the mystics of old times when, they spent years in caves or years in solitude and, were gifted so much insight that they then shared with everybody. The modern awakening process is now available to everyone, and it happens in between the chaos of our life. And so we need guidance on this because it just turns our lives upside down. And so it was such an honor to be able to put this information out there, and a lot of fun writing it. And I just know that as the awakening process picks up speed collectively, that this information is needed. So that's the short version.
I do love the fact that it really is like a survivor's guide to spiritual awakening right now, right? Like you said, it's completely different. We're in a new era. Things are moving so rapidly. And a lot of people are being activated, whether they want to or not, kind of. So it's just like, oh no, now what do we do? And it's like, what? No, we got a survivor's guide. So I absolutely love that.
Great.
And so, how do you think awakening changes our perception of reality?
How does it not change our perception of reality? It changes it in every single way. It's a complete overhaul of our operating systems. And so it doesn't just change one area of our life. It's not like it's just like we see spirituality different, or, we see humanity different. We see all of it different. All of it is changed in my experience, and my experience with my clients is that it's a complete overhaul in perception, because the veil has lifted. We're no longer under the influence of some heavy conditioning that has kept us separated from spirit. And now we are connected, and our consciousness has shifted, our vibration has shifted, what we believe, what we feel, what we think, what we say, everything is shifted. And that's why it can be so tumultuous and so challenging for people, is because suddenly they're living a whole new reality.
Absolutely. And to your point there, I know one part in the book we were talking about NDEs. And so my sister actually got her awakening through a near-death experience. It was a really crazy situation. But in that, she had no choice but to awaken through it. And so now she's on the other side of it, like this drastically different person. And it opened her up to so many energies that it was kind of like a hard process for her to kind of figure it out. And I'm like, well, I can help you as much as I can from my experiences, but because I've like been on this journey my entire life, it's a little different for me. So I did the best I could, but I think that books like this can help people like her. And so I just was reading that part, and I just was thinking so much about my sister and how everything, and this probably happened, I want to say about 7 years ago for her. But yeah, to be living in one state, and then all of a sudden this super tragedy happened, and now automatically you step through like a whole portal, and now there's a whole nother world that you're opened up to. And so yeah, but I think because of the way that it happened, I didn't really have certain tools to give her to really ease her into it, because she wasn't eased into it.
Yeah, for a lot of
I love the fact that you touched on that.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it is almost an aggressive wake-up call that just happens, and there's no preparation. And sometimes, so often, that is through a traumatic event, like an NDE, or divorce, or death of a loved one, or death of a child, or disease, illness, things that just shake the very foundation of our life. And that is often what is needed for people to be shaken out of the trance of illusion. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. And those are the people that I probably worked with the most, and there were some that had spontaneous awakenings that there was nothing to point to. There was no specific event. They just woke up different one morning. And a lot of us would think, oh, that sounds good. Like, let's do that, But that's actually just as challenging, or challenging in its own ways, because similar to the NDE, without the trauma and the physical trauma, it's just a complete automatic shift with no time to, adjust, no time to get used to it, no time to get introduced to what you're moving into. It's just like, here we are, now what, And I think that has to happen more and more, because it is time for the scales to tip. All of the energy that's being dumped onto the earth at this point is pushing people into the awakening process, whether they feel ready for it or not, you know. But I believe when it happens, it's because their soul is ready for it. They're on some level, they are ready for it. And so it's exciting and extremely challenging at the same time.
Yeah, and I totally agree that right now the energy, and probably the energy, it's been this way for the past 5 years or so, as it has just been rapidly picking up speed. And, you know, I kind of feel like you feel, even if you're someone who doesn't resonate with being spiritual in all of these things, and you have this awakening, it's because on some level you were ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what we're seeing is a lot of people being activated or going through these awakenings that were like, you know, I wasn't really thinking about this before, but now this happened, and you know, and that's like, I feel like you were called to write this book at this time and put it out because it is so needed right now. People don't know where to look, and a lot of the older information is not relevant entirely to the time. So, and we are like stepping into something that is like we're the first ones to really experience this new, you know, shift of the earth, which is exciting, but also very chaotic. A lot of people, like, I say this a lot, but you know, everyone's like, oh, the world's on fire, and it's like, good, let it burn.
Yeah.
Because on the other side we'll have something so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like when we're going through it in our personal life, and our personal life is burning down, you know, we're losing relationships, and we're, you know, going through divorce, or we're losing our job, all of these things that trigger awakening, and trigger complete transformation in ourselves. It's the same collectively. It's the same exact thing. And so if we can zoom out and see the bigger picture, then it's easier to kind of understand why all of this is happening, even though it won't ever totally make sense, you know, the amount of suffering, the amount of strange things that happen. Some of them are beyond logic. But the bigger picture of it all is that all of it has to come to the surface. All of the illusion, all of the toxicity, all of the pain, all of the lies have to come to the surface in order to be seen and cleared away. And so that happens individually in our lives, especially when we go through something like the dark night of the soul. And then collectively, I really believe that we are in a collective dark night of the soul currently, and the same thing is happening.
Yeah, and speaking to seeing through the illusions, like that has been a trend over the past couple of years. I guess started maybe 2023 and going onward, where as far as society goes, the veil is being lifted on many things, and people are being able to see, like, oh, what's really going on, and I love it. Yes, show everyone what's going on, so we can just push right through that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, what does ego death actually feel like to you?
So the experience of ego death feels like a death. It feels like something is dying. When I've gone through multiple small ego deaths, and each time it feels like something is dying. So a lot of people will challenge me on the term ego death, because they'll say you can't actually kill your ego, which is true. But the reason that that we call it ego death, and it's been called ego death for just decades. It goes way, 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 way back. And so it's a term that wasn't coined by modern day spiritualists. It was started, and I'm forgetting the origin of it, but it's been around for a long time. And so when the ego falls away, really what it is a shifting of the power structure from the ego-centered living, from the mind-centered living, to the heart-centered living, to the spirit-centered living. And so though we are not killing off a part of us, we are changing that power structure and giving it back to the heart, which is where our power originated, is in the heart. And so it feels like a death because a part of it, our conditioning, a part of our belief structure, a part of what we thought we were, is dying. And so it's going to go kicking and screaming. And so it feels like a power struggle. It feels like a death. And until we surrender to the process, it feels like a lot of suffering. And once we surrender to the process of that ego death, and oftentimes we're forced to because of what's happening, then we can start to feel the rebirth of it all. And so ego death really is a process of letting go and remembering at the same time. And there are lots of ways that we experience that ego death. And I believe that even when it feels like a big ego death experience, and maybe it's through plant medicine, maybe it's through trauma, maybe it's spontaneous, however it comes, and it may feel really intense, it's still just a small ego death. It's still just one layer of that onion. Because if we were to have our ego obliterated all in one strike, we would not be able to function as a human being. And so
I think that would be like psychosis, you know.
And so I really believe the awakening process is a series of small ego deaths. And in the book, I do talk about, I've coined it the 5 living deaths, and there's many other living deaths. But there's, 5 living deaths that I've seen in many, many of the clients that I work with. And it's really just peeling back the identity, peeling back the ego, peeling back the illusion, so that we can get to the core of who we are and get to truth, ultimately.
Yeah, I think that's like perfectly said. Because a lot of people go back and forth about the ego thing, and I think people get too caught up in the actual terminology of things, which it's like, all right, just forget that. Like, just connect with the meaning of it. There, like you said, are layers of ourselves, and that we have to peel through to get to the heart of the matter, like you said, because the heart is the thing that I feel like, especially during this time, love is the thing pushing us through this, right? So a lot of people need to reconnect with their heart energy, and once we do that, that will help open us up to so much more. But I definitely hear people. I've heard so many people, oh, you can't kill off the ego. It's like, all right, calm down.
Yeah, we could waste a lot of time arguing about words, and ultimately it's just semantics. And what we're trying to describe is beyond words. It's pure energy. And so we do our best to use our words, and then we listen to the energy behind them. and connect with the voices and the messages that feel authentic to us. And really that's all we can do, because words mean different things to different people, and that's just how it is. And so that was one of the challenges of writing a book like this, was trying to transcend words by writing words. It can be difficult.
As a writer, I 100% understand that, especially at this point in my life where I've come on the other side of things from not feeling almost anything to feeling an overflowing abundance of emotions. And so because of that, it's like sometimes I have a hard time putting into words what I'm feeling at the moment because it's so much. So I was joking with someone earlier, like I'm just going to start sending energy to people and just, you'll understand. Just send me the energy.
Exactly. We'll get to that point where that's all we need to do. But that's absolutely a beautiful description of the awakening process, is that all of a sudden, as we peel back our defenses and as we peel back the walls that we've created that have separated us from ourselves, we suddenly feel so much. All of the emotions come flooding in. All of, everything that we've been avoiding comes flooding in. And even once we've moved past, we've done a lot of healing and we've looked at those things that have come up and, we've done the shadow work, we are still left as highly sensitive creatures because all of those layers are now gone. Those defenses are gone. And there is, in this world, there's so much to feel and experience. It can be so overwhelming.
Yeah, I've learned to embrace it and really enjoy it. At first, it was a bit nerve-wracking. I talked about it a lot. Like I felt really crazy, but now I love it. It's just like to be able to just go out and just feel the love of everything. It just makes me want to even just embody that more and give it out more freely than ever. Like, don't you feel this? If you don't, here you go. Take some love.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so beautiful, because at the core, it's all love, no matter what it is. It's all love. And so by allowing ourselves to feel all of that, we give other people permission to do the same thing. And how transformative that can be for our world. Talk about perspective shift. It's huge. And so as you were saying, you were talking.
So
go ahead.
I was going to ask you another question. You can finish. Go ahead.
I was just going to transition into the idea of discerning between head and heart, from the voice of the ego to the voice of love, as something that is so essential for us in this time period. And so, as we awaken and we become familiar with the voice of the heart, and we start to also hear the voice of our intuition, which is really the same thing. Many people will ask me, like, how do I know the difference between the voice of my intuition and the voice of fear, or the voice of the ego? And it's a great question, and it's definitely something that we have to use our discernment around, because a lot of times the ego can be really tricky and can present itself as specific information, or something that comes through as we're like, oh wow, I need to, for me, I remember the moment that I realized the difference between the voice of the ego and the voice of my intuition was I was driving down the road and I was feeling really great about life. I was having a good day. I was in a good space. And all of a sudden, I got this thought that, oh my God, something's wrong with my daughter who is at summer camp right now. And the voice got louder and louder and louder. And I'm like, oh, it's the mother's intuition. I need to check. And so I pulled over and I called the camp. And I was like waiting for them to tell me this horrible thing that happened. And they're like, oh no, she's doing great. She's got all these friends. She's playing. She's having fun. And of course, I was totally relieved, but I was also confused because I was so sure that that was my intuition. And as I sat with it and I kept driving, you know, I realized that that was the voice of fear. And that there is part of us that gets uncomfortable when things are too good. And so the ego comes in and tries to knock us down and say it's not safe to feel that good. It's not safe to feel that positive because the other shoe's going to drop. And so it just brings in the other shoe for you before it even has a chance to manifest. And there it was, all of a sudden, caught in this mental loop of fear that I thought was intuition. And so from that experience and then watching my own reactions to things and working with other clients, I came up with 5 or 4 different qualifiers to help people discern between the voice of the ego and the voice of the heart. And the first one is volume, is how loud is that voice, you know? Because like Adi Ashanti is one of the spiritual teachers that I really like. And he says the truth doesn't need to be loud. And the voice of the heart is not loud, intrusive, or aggressive. It just is. It's just there. The ego has to be loud to get our attention. And, you know, and fear is loud. And it often will get louder and louder and louder until we pay attention to it. So that first qualifier is volume. So if it's loud, that's a really good indication that it's not your intuition, that it is fear and ego-based and mind-based.
Experiencing identity distortions, random crying spells, feeling like your soul is shedding, but forgot to leave a user manual? Welcome to the Intergalactic Ego Dissolution and Ascension Stabilization Program. Here at the Council, we know that ego death can feel more like ego chaos. Our programs include intuitive recalibration, frequency-based nervous system support, and emergency grounding units for those mid-activation meltdowns. No judgment, no past lives shaming, just cosmic care. Every participant receives a complimentary map of consciousness overlay and a frequency-matched soul guide. Because spiritual awakenings should come with instructions and snacks. You're not broken, you're breaking open. Let us help you rebuild in alignment.
The second one is location, is looking at where that message is coming from. Is it coming originally from the heart or as a feeling or body-based experience, or is it coming from the mind, you know? And so the mind is the ego, the heart is the intuition, the body is the intuition, the truth. And then the third one is quality. So we got volume, location, third one is quality. Is it going on making up this huge story like it did for me about this horrible thing that happened, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and just like grows into this, you know, thing that goes on? Or is it simple? You know, because the truth is simple. The heart-centered intuition is simple and to the point. And the ego and fear has to create a story in order to hook us in. And so that's the third one, is the quality. And then the fourth one is the timing. And so this is kind of related to that quality, is like, is it the very first thought or feeling, because if it is, that's most likely the intuition. Have you gotten there, after a couple of minutes of stewing in the mind and, and then gotten to this point, like I did in the car, with my fear. And, if it's not the first thought and it's taken a little while to get there, it's most likely our intuition and our ego. I mean, it's most likely our ego and the mind and the fear. So those are the 4 qualifiers that I found that help us to discern head from heart. And as we become more adept at recognizing the thoughts in our head and calling them out quickly, it really helps us to, 1, eliminate or turn down the volume of the mind and of the ego and the fear-based thoughts, and turn up the volume of our heart and of truth.
I love those steps, and I think that a lot of people could really get something from that, because asking yourself those questions will kind of bring you back to reality. Yeah, and I know for me, one of like when I studied my human design chart, I operate from my spleen. So that means that I absolutely must listen to my first thought. See, I am an introvert, and I like to think. So usually, of course, that first instinct, that intuition is always correct, especially for me. But I notice once I let it sit for a second, and then I start to ask myself questions, I start to end up somewhere else, and then I start to question that initial instinct that I felt. And I had to really learn to just not do that, right? Just follow the gut, because that's going to be always right. There's never been a time that I've ever listened to my intuition and it steered me wrong. But there's plenty of times, too many to count, that I listened to my head and all the things going on, and it just drove me crazy. And so I absolutely love that process that you have of putting these things in place to ask yourself these questions. Is it coming from here? How does it feel? Like all of that to help us stay on course, because life will get in the way. No matter how deeply spiritual you are, things just happen, and we need those things that can help keep us grounded in the actual truth of what is going on, and not the stories we like to tell ourselves.
Exactly. There's a lot of noise out there. So much noise, so many stories, more and more being thrown at us. And having the tools to sort through that is more important than ever.
Absolutely. So, how would you tell people to trust something that they cannot see?
Good question. Yeah, because the mind is going to try to talk us out of it. But the key is, do you feel it? Does it vibrate in your body like truth? Do you feel something moving in you when you connect with that truth or that idea or that energy? And so I would say, yes, be skeptical of everything. Question everything, absolutely. But when it vibrates like truth in the body, when it hits a nerve that you're just like, yes, you can feel it, then it's a process of starting to shift your acknowledgement from needing to be mind-based into being body-based. Because our bodies don't lie. What we feel doesn't lie. Our minds can make up all sorts of bullshit, but our body is the one barometer that we can count on. And so I would say, especially for people who are new to ideas about the spiritual realms, and they really feel that it's truth, but their mind is arguing with them, and maybe the people around them are questioning their sanity or whatever it is, leaning into how that feels for you and giving yourself permission to really acknowledge and validate what you're feeling is the key, is absolutely the key to accepting truths or what's true for you, even when it's not of this material realm.
Yeah, I love that. And so, if you could describe your personal awakening in one word, what would it be?
A massive internal earthquake. That's 3 words. So maybe earthquake.
Yeah, I could see that. Like life-shattering, cracking you wide open.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a crack. And, there's that quote that, and it might be Rumi, I forget who it is, but it's something about how, like, the crack is where the light enters. And I like to think of it as the opposite of when we're cracked open like that in the awakening experience, is like, now it's actually where our light can move out. It's all of a sudden we're cracked open so that we can experience our light. Our light can now shine, not just for ourselves as a guidepost or a flashlight, but also on the entire world, on the people around us. And so I really love that visual of being cracked open so that our light can shine in the way that it's meant to.
Yeah, and usually all the good stuff is on the inside, right?
Exactly, all the real stuff. Yeah.
So how does the map of consciousness help navigating awakening?
So the map of consciousness is something that David Hawkins came up with. I actually have the book right here, so I highly recommend this book and his work. And he's done a lot of work around consciousness, around spirituality, around emotions. And he basically came up with this map that has a progression of emotions or energetic experiences like shame, grief, aggression, violence, all the way up to peace, happiness, joy, love, compassion, so the whole spectrum of it. And, he's mapped this out in a way to kind of show us how we can move up. And he also has mapped the vibrational essence of each one of these qualities. And so literally talking about raising our vibration. And there's other amazing teachers who have talked about this. One of the more common ones is Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about our the higher level, high vibrational emotions as opposed to lower vibrational emotions. But one thing that I really love that David Hawkins shares in this book is about how individuals who have climbed this map of consciousness and are now operating at a higher level of consciousness, at a higher vibration, that we have the ability to negate the lower level energies. And so, a certain amount of people who have achieved this higher level operating system, are then able to negate this lower level energy of violence, of aggression, of hatred, of whatever it is, simply by being into existence, in existence. And this is how we shift the scales. This is really exciting to me because it shows us, it's like, by taking care of ourselves, by doing our healing work, we are changing the world. And to me, it's like the motivation that everybody needs, because a lot of people be like, is it selfish for me to do this healing work when there's so much suffering in the world? And I would say to you, if you have the privilege and the opportunity to have the time to do that healing work for yourself, it's your responsibility to do it, because that ripples out and affects everyone around us, and affects the people who maybe don't have the time, energy, resources, because their life is so difficult, and so we have that responsibility to make that change, because it does ripple out and affect the world around us. And so, like Rupert Sheldrake and his work with the morphic fields, and the 100th Monkey Story, all of these things talk about the ripple effect of how one energy field affects another. And so it's really exciting to me. So there's a lot of different teachers that talk about this, but I really like David Hawkins' work on this, for sure.
And that's so pretty much quantum mechanics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since we all are connected, I mean, there is nothing that we can do that won't affect the entirety of the world and the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I believe that this is why a lot of people are stepping out now. A lot of the people who were activated, years ago, are feeling the call to come forward, right, and spread that light and that energy, because all it takes is, few people to have an effect on a massive area. And so I feel like it's like putting little lights around the world, and we're just like bridging gaps of light. We're shielding the earth in this energy and helping promote the shift. So I definitely love that concept of the map consciousness, and it just really explains what's happening right now. I was talking to someone the other day, saying how and I guess in a sense they were having those feelings of feeling selfish for focusing on themselves and their healing journey. And so I was basically saying, listen, the healing that you do, pretty much you said, it affects everything around you. So the better you are, the better your environment, the better the people around you. And I've seen that in my personal life, how just me existing as who I am changed the people around me. And I just am like, it's so cool, right?
It's so cool once you really start to see it and you get that confirmation, and it just pushes you to want to do more healing for yourself, because you see how much it affects everyone around us and gives them permission to do it for themselves. And really to go back to that analogy of the crack and the light coming out is like, we need all of the light in this world that we can get. And so by doing the work to release our light and allow our light to shine, it's only going to have a positive and healing effect on the world around us. And for a lot of us, that's the reason we came to the planet, is to do just that.
So for all the people out there like me, I used to wonder, like, why would I ever agree to come back here? This is why.
Exactly. Yep, this is why. This is why it's needed more than ever.
Yes. Now it's like I understand of how important of the time it really truly is. Like I feel like so blessed to be a part of this, and people always look at me like I'm crazy. Like, what are you talking about? It's crazy right now. I'm trying to be alive.
Yeah, it is so crazy. And, we look around and there is so much suffering, and there's so much violence, and there's so many lies, and there's so much toxicity. And at the same time, there is so much beauty coming out. There is so much. It's amazing to watch the shift in popular culture, that now it's accepted to meditate, breath work, meditation, yoga, even talking about past traumas, and, talking of things about like sexual abuse, and things like plant medicine and tarot and psychic readings are so much more accepted than they were 10 years ago. All of those things were taboo. And now it's like people can't get enough of it in all walks of life. And it's amazing. You go on TikTok and, my kids, it blows my mind. My kids will come in and they'll tell me something they saw on TikTok about like meditation or breath work or something spiritual. And I'll be like, I've been saying that for, 20 years. But it took TikTok for them to actually hear it. and so, bless that, however the message comes is beautiful and perfect. And I think that's part of why it is such an amazing time to be alive, because with all of the challenges is also coming all of the tools. All of the tools are given to us and are now really needed, and people are wanting them. People are ready for them. People are hungry for these things. And it's exciting because the shifting is happening. The awakening is happening on a collective level. And to me, that's really, really exciting.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I feel like there are so many resources available to everyone at this point in time, where it's almost impossible not to awaken to anything. It's just pretty much being shoved down our throats. But it's like, this is such an abundant time. And I love this. So describe a moment when you knew that spiritual awakening was a real thing.
Okay, so I'll have to share from I think it's one of the first stories in my book. And it was a moment I was in my office. So I do, I do energy work, body work, Reiki, sound healing. And at this point, in my life, I was in this small office cleaning up from a day of seeing clients and working with clients. And I started to realize that, all of my clients that have been coming in recently have been describing these weird symptoms that they have. They're like weird energetic impulses going through their body. They're, feeling they're having a panic attack, but it's not really a panic attack. They're feeling kind of altered and out of it, or different emotions coming up that are unusual. And a lot of them didn't want to talk about it. They was kind of shy at first, and I would pull it out of them. And so I was in my office this day, and I was thinking, wow, it's really interesting that so many people have been describing this in the past week. And then I realized, oh, wait, these are the same symptoms that I had a couple years ago when I was really in the fires of awakening, when I was in the really challenging parts. And then I started putting all of the pieces together. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't just something that happened to me. That's happening to everybody, And it just was one of those moments where my mind was blown, where I just got this information dropped into me of like, no, this is happening on a much bigger level than you can even imagine. That you have no idea. It's not because you're special and you had these experiences, which of course my ego was like, oh, I wanted to believe I was special. It was like, no, this is happening collectively. And it was also at that moment that I realized that I wanted to be there to help people going through this process. And that it was part of what I came here to do and part of what my job was. And so that was probably the moment that I realized that awakening was not only real, but it was happening on a global level.
Yeah, I think that I didn't really know about the global level until COVID. And that's when I realized, like, oh, there's like a whole massive awakening. And that was like exciting for me because it was like for the first time, oh, I don't have to be the weird person, by myself. There's other people too, and but that also made me realize that we're about to step into something brand new, and that was exciting and scary, and just uncertainty and things of that nature. But once I got over the fact of like, oh no, like I was like, this is exciting, So, what are some of the common struggles that you see often with people going through their awakening for the, I guess, like first time consciously?
It's usually a combination of symptoms that people are having. Often one of the most common symptoms is exhaustion, that people they're just tired because there's so much energy moving through the body, so much shifting, so much happening. So sometimes people feel like they can't even get out of bed some days. And I kind of equate that to when we're healing from our sickness and all of our energy is going into the body to heal. And this is a similar process because there's deep healing happening at the core of our being, and that's exhausting. With that can come, because it is a detox process, which is also part of that exhaustion, as this higher vibrational energy is coming through us, it is clearing out the lower vibrational energy. It's clearing out the toxins in the form of trauma, in the form of old programming, in the form of destructive thoughts, in the form of things that just need to be healed. And so there's a massive detox process that happens physically, energetically, and emotionally. And so that detox process can cause the exhaustion. It can cause a level of mind fog, brain fog, which is very common. It can cause us just to feel kind of nauseous and sick. It can cause other weird symptoms, aches and pains that come up, ringing in the ears, headaches, and all sorts of things that I see people experience as they go through this process. Also, weird vibrational experiences where you might feel like a energy moving through in the form of a vibration, or like something like zinging through the body. You might feel like you're in an altered state of consciousness. And for many people, they just feel weird and off and they don't know why. And that can make regular life very challenging. And because we're asked to be present with the process of what's happening, with this shifting that's happening, so that we can heal what's coming up for us in those moments. And so there's often, a healing crisis that happens, and all of these symptoms can be a part of that healing crisis. And so probably the hardest thing that I see for people is making room for it, and letting go of the expectation that they have for themselves to live this normal life and make some space for being present with what's asking to be healed in them in this moment.
Yeah, I can resonate with when I was coming out of my Kundalini awakening experience. I actually got really sick. It was for a multitude of reasons. One of those was absolutely my environment. It was the people I was around that were extremely toxic. And but on that, I realized that I was more physically susceptible to your energy. So it didn't just show up energetically, it started showing physically for me, which was a new experience. I was like, what is happening? Like, they literally, because there was so much toxic negative energy, it affected my respiratory system. And so yeah, it put me in the hospital and everything.
Wow.
But but coming out of that and then eventually removing myself from the situation, it was beautiful, because I literally did a 180 as soon as I left. But also it made me realize how more sensitive I am to energies, and it shows physically for me now, which was something that never happened before. Yeah, what would you tell people that are experiencing new types of situations in their body?
One, to breathe through it and be present with it. So instead of getting lost in the fear of it, because it's easy to go down a rabbit hole of what this means or what could be happening to us, is to breathe into it, to be present with it, to let it move through the body, because really that's all it is. It's energy moving through the body. And so if we, through fear-based thoughts or resistance, it just gets stuck in the body. So whatever we can do to help it move through the body, especially in the form of self-care. And so we really need to up our self-care in these moments and eat much healthier food, drink lots of water. I found that a lot of people complain about being so thirsty during this time because that's part of the detox process. And so we need to drink more water to keep everything moving through us and keep everything fluid and flowing. And then all the other self-care elements that we personally are drawn to, whether that's meditation, breath work, yoga, sound healing, whatever it is that helps us, really leaning into those things. And having plenty of time alone, or as much time alone as possible, is often necessary during this time to help process what's going on, to help be able to differentiate between what is actually ours and who we are, and what is actually the influence of the people around us, of society, of this collective programming that we've all been, susceptible to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Someone who spends a lot of time alone, I can usually easily suss out other energies. I'm like, hold up, Like, yeah, I am like big proponent of spend time with yourself, learn yourself, study yourself. I think that's the best thing we can do, because, as I said, especially when you live with people, or have to work in situations where you're around people. We all have this, I think it's like 16-foot energetic field. So whenever you're within 16 feet of someone, unfortunately, you're taking in their energy. So we have to learn to discern what is ours, and not take that on with us, because sometimes, especially if you're constantly around those people, you can forget, like, what is yours, or what am I feeling? Is this really my feeling, or is this somebody else's feeling? Even with sickness, like you can ask yourself, like, because I'm someone who rarely ever gets sick, and so going through getting sick last week, I was like, hold up, what is going on here? Because I literally don't ever get sick, and really having to understand that I had to, something that I don't really do, which I'm trying to work on, is put up protection. Because,
Yeah.
I tend to forget those things. It is important.
It is important. It's definitely important. And there are lots of ways that we can do it. And one of the best ways to protect ourselves is keeping our vibration high, keeping our energy field strong and big. And I teach a lot of my students about, when they want to work with other people doing something like energy work, but they're afraid of taking on other people's energy. I talk about this with people who are empathic as well. It's like keeping our energy field big is actually the best protection we have, because there's this counterproductive mechanism that we all do when we're fearful, when we're around energies that we don't like. We tend to draw our energy into ourselves. And even though we think that's protecting ourselves, it's actually just allowing someone else's energy to get closer, because we no longer have that buffer of our own energy field. And so kind of switching the way we think about that and allowing ourselves to be this bright light, to be this energetic force, to be love in a body, is one of the most protective things that we can do for ourselves, because it creates this buffer around us. And so when we do get sick, or we are stressed, or we feel more influenced by other people's energy, it's a great time to just check in with ourselves and say, okay, what do I need right now to build my field? Do I need to step away from everybody for a minute and just give myself this time to refuel and to take care of myself so that I can keep my energy field nice and strong, not only as a protection mechanism, but also because it's what other people are going to feel and what they're going to receive at the same time. So it just goes right back to it not being selfish and being the best thing we can do for ourselves and for everyone around us.
Yeah, and unfortunately for me, it was like it wasn't just for me; it was for the people in my household. Um, Unfortunately, they had to learn the value of me,
Yep.
and I had to get put down to say, "Hey, rest and stop overdoing." That was the whole situation of it all. And so when I came out on the other side, they were like, "Oh my God!" So we didn't realize like how much you do and all these things. And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's important too. It's really important. Yeah.
Yes. So what do you think conscious evolution looks like?
That's a great question. It doesn't look like we think it should look like, it doesn't look like someone wearing all white and reciting mantras and, sitting in meditation all day. Well, all those things are fine and sometimes important tools. But conscious evolution, especially on a collective level, looks like people willing to be honest with themselves and taking responsibility for themselves and really taking a hard look and asking themselves what's true for them and stepping into that responsibility of being their full authentic self. And so conscious awakening can look really messy. It can look like it looks right now on our planet, very messy. At first glance, you're like, there's nothing conscious about this mess right here. But it is all of the illusions being stripped away. And so I would say that's one thing that conscious evolution looks like. It looks like all of the illusions coming to the surface and being stripped away until all we have is ourselves. And so right now on the planet, I mean, especially in the US, and I have no doubt that this is happening in many, many other places in the world, but in the US, there's these like wars, truth wars. People are saying, I have the truth and they're lying, and the media is full of shit. And we all know that all of it's being bought out. And so we can't pinpoint this is true, this isn't true. And so what it is like grasping for straws, but there's nothing to grasp onto. And that is the awakening process, is like we're free falling and our life is falling apart around us and there's nothing to grasp onto. And so all we can do is go deeper into ourselves. And that's it, And so I really think that is the bigger purposes of what's happening right now on the planet, is that we're all being forced to go deeper into ourselves and to find out what's true for us. What is our truth? What does our truth look like? And, and not even give energy to all the other stuff. because conscious evolution, even though it's happening on a collective level, is also a very personal process.
Absolutely. And like I definitely feel more recently that a lot of people, probably within the past month, that a lot of people were being called to go inward again. Like it was like a period where it was like go outward and show yourself, and now take a step back, go inward. But I see this energy, and it's like, all right, so we got to go back in and really think about, well, what have we done so far? Where am I at this point? What's going on in the world? And how do I feel about this for me? And like you said, it is a very personal journey. But in that, our personal journey is a collective journey, and so it is. It's like we're all moving at the same time on this wave, and it's just like, you know. So I really love it for all all the people that really felt alone. I love the fact that people are more willing to share their experiences and talk about this, and let people know, like, no, there's a whole community out here for you. You don't have to do this alone. We're all actually feeling these energies, so you're not crazy either.
Exactly. It's so important, and it's so beautiful to watch when people realize, wow, okay, like you said, I'm not crazy. Like, because really a lot of people do think that they are going insane, that they're losing their minds. Sometimes their family has even put them in the psych ward or on medication because they don't understand what's happening. And so the more that we talk about it and the more that we share with each other, the more validating that is to people who do feel alone, and feel like they're going crazy. And it is so beautiful that there is such a strong, growing community of people who are waking up and really stepping into the process of conscious evolution. And it's exciting.
Yeah, and I personally think it is a fine line between kind of like spiritual gifts and awakening and mental illness. Fine line, and to have the right people around you or the right resources is very important.
Yeah.
I know that for my younger sibling, her gift is she can see angels. Now, there's a huge age gap. I think she is 15-year age gap between us. So she spends all her time with my mother. My mother is like, "Oh, you see what? You hear voices? Well, let's get you on medication." And it's like. So when I started spending more time with her, I started asking her questions about it, and I'm like, they said that you're schizophrenic, and I just want to know, like, tell me more about it, just from your experience, unbiased, everything. And that's when I learned that she sees angels and she talks to them.
Yeah.
And and I said, oh, wow. So I'm like, you have a gift.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm so sorry that like putting you on all these meds and all these things because no one understands. And to be able to give her that safe space to be able to communicate about all the experience she's having, I think that's so important. But yeah, if for the younger people going through it that may not have someone around them that understands, I think that conversations like these are also very important. Books like yours are extremely important because it helps them understand that they're not crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm so glad that your sister has you, to someone who can listen and understand. because it has been misdiagnosed so many times. These beautiful inherent gifts that people have been misdiagnosed, and then that can be so destructive to a human being. And so that is definitely part of my hope. And what I am seeing happening is that people are starting to understand that there are more possibilities than, a mental health issue, that it shows up in different ways. And it's slow to be accepted, especially on the medical level or on the, more professional psychiatric level. It's slow, but it is happening. And so we just need this information to get out to more and more people, so that people don't get misdiagnosed, and so that they do get honored and are able to bring their gifts to the world without feeling like they're doing something wrong, that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. And I think that was the biggest thing for her. Like, she's like, and then on top of that, the complications, all the side effects of medication, and, it just really deteriorates the quality of life. And so, I think that also one thing that I'm enjoying, like you said, there is like these services, so like BetterHelp, where you can actually go in and pick someone who actually has a spiritual background and who would be more understanding about something like that. And I kind of showed her those things, like, hey, if you need to talk to someone, but you need to talk to someone who will truly understand the complications of this. Like, this is not just a black and white issue. There could be underlying things going on, but we also need to look at the full spectrum picture.
Exactly.
And so the fact that there are things like that for people now, where you can actually pick a professional therapist who is also spiritual. It's so amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it reminds me, I had a client just last week who came in, and she was sharing her story from a few years ago, that she's just now processing as an awakening experience, but it was like it was diagnosed as a sudden mental breakdown. And it appeared on every level like she was having, a psychotic episode. But when you go deeper and you ask her what was happening, it was spiritual to the core in nature. And she was diagnosed as bipolar, and she was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and they tried to put her on this medication and that medication and everything. And she basically was able to navigate it herself, so that she's not on medication, but she hasn't fully been able to understand what happened until now. And so it was a reminder to me, and it feels like important to share, because there may be people out here having that experience, people who are listening, who their awakening episode or awakening experience presents as a mental breakdown of some sort. And like you said, it's important to look at the whole picture. It's important to also address if there's other issues, but to see that at the core, there's a deep spiritual shift happening. There's a book that I love called Am I Bipolar or Am I Waking Up? And I forget the author's name, but his story is very much like this woman's story that I was just sharing, where he had a very sudden breakdown that was of a very high spiritual nature. And because all of his inhibitions left him, he ended up in the psych ward really fast. The cops came and took him away. It's a great story. I recommend people read it. But really what's happening is that cracking open is so sudden. And what the spiritual truths that are coming through and the revelations that people have are coming through, and they're trying to put it into words, and to people who don't understand, they sound crazy. But actually it's such a gift. It's a deep transformation. And so understanding what's happening means that we can use it as a tool for healing for ourselves and a healing for that spiritual evolution. But often we do need people around us who can support us through it. And so finding those people is key. But I highly recommend that book to anyone.
Yeah, I definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely would love to check that one out. That sounds like he had a wild awakening.
Yeah.
So what role does sound and frequency play in healing and ascension?
Another great question. So it's based sound healing and using frequency in healing is based on the fact that everything is in vibration. Everything on the planet is in vibration. And not only that, every organ in our body has its own innate vibration. Every cell in our body has its own vibration. And so we are this collective symphony of sounds that we can't hear, of vibration. And when we are sick, when we are stressed, when we are exposed to life, some things go out of tune. And the purpose of sound healing is to bring us back to our own innate vibration, our own original vibration, our own vibrational signature of health, our own song of our soul, if you will. And so all of these frequencies help to bring us back into tune with ourselves, but they have different purposes. Some of them don't always feel pleasant at the moment because they are meeting something in our body that is unpleasant and needs to be moved, and in the form of an energy blockage. And so it helps to detox the body, which isn't always pleasant, and sometimes it's really pleasant. So both experiences are normal. But really the goal of awakening is to restore us back to our original vibration, our vibration at a much higher level. And so I think that's why sound healing has become so popular in the past few years, because it is such an important tool in the ascension process. And I watch people have experiences all of the time during sound healings, whether it's in personal private sessions or in group sessions, where they've had experiences that have just transported them to other realities, or were given information that they needed for their healing, or were able just to shift out of the pain and suffering that they have felt to be shown that there's another way. And so I think that frequency is especially important right now for our healing process, but also because we are being inundated by toxic frequencies all of the time. And so taking the time to choose which frequencies we expose ourselves to, and to use these frequencies that are of a higher level and not of a destructive nature is just an important part of self-healing and self-care right now on this planet.
Yeah, I think I have my entire household trained. Because I literally, one, music is life, so frequencies in all forms, but music is my everything. Two, I don't really watch much TV, but I do keep my frequency music on like 24/7. And so when it's not on, the house is like, wait, why don't we hear this subtle hum of anything?
Nice.
So it's like, yeah, and my animals in particular, they know the different sounds for different types of day, especially at nighttime. That's my favorite, where I love to see them. Where I put the night frequencies on, and automatically they start yawning and stretching out and getting comfortable. Like I love it.
Oh, it's so good. I love that too. Yeah. Yeah. What are your night frequencies? I'm curious.
Well, right now it is brown noise, space sounds.
Yeah.
That's. Sometimes I get to the point where I really don't want to hear anything but the law of the brown noise, and that's usually when I'm taking in too much energy. So lately it's been that.
Yeah, nice. I love that. Yeah, and that's something that people can find online, is the brown noise and versus the white noise versus there's all different levels. It's another rabbit hole to explore.
Oh yes. I could like do a whole episode just on that alone. But that goes back to resources. It's so many resources out here. So there are literally hundreds of frequency channels that to choose from. So I dabble in a bunch, but my favorite right now, like I said, probably for the past couple months, has been the brown noise at night. That instantly clears my mind and puts me in that state to drift off to sleep almost immediately.
Yeah, I love that. It really does affect our sleep. It affects our nervous system. I think that's one of the most immediate effects that we feel during sound healing, is the way that it affects our nervous system by balancing our brain waves and then bringing our nervous system into a more balanced state. And that's another reason why people need it so much, is because everybody's nervous system is overstimulated at this point, really, no matter who you are.
So I definitely am someone who tells people to like turn off the TV, get away from your phone. At least try not to look at your phone for maybe the first 30 minutes if you can. I mean, I know that we lead busy lives, and but I feel like at least wait before you take in those frequencies.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Even though the phone can be a great resource for meditation and things like that, I personally, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to touch my phone until I've done my meditation and my breath work, without any of that in my space, because it just feels a lot more effective for me and for my self-care.
Yes, same, exactly the same. So final messages to the universe on awakening, surrender, and expansion.
Yeah. So that final message is love. So if we think about what are we awakening to, what are we surrendering to, and what are we expanding into, is love. Because that's what we're made of. That's what this universe is made of. That's what everything is made of, is love. And so no matter what's going on in our life, if we can lean into that love, wherever we can find it, wherever we can feel it within ourselves, that is the secret to evolving and growing, slowing down and healing, is leaning into, expanding into, surrendering to, and awakening to the love that we are in every moment.
Yes, I feel like love is the pulse of the awakening. And I just feel like like a little love child. Just really, yeah, love for everyone. But you're absolutely right. That is the core of it all. Is love. It changes the world.
It does, and it can seem oversimplistic, or it can seem like, well, great, but how do I do that? And that is the work. If you're feeling any of those things, like one, that's simplistic, or two, I don't know what that is or what that means. That is the work for you. Follow that thread. Ask the questions. What is love for you? How can you love yourself more? What do you need in order to be connected with that love? And just explore that topic for you, because even though it sounds oversimple, there's nothing simple about it at all. And I love Rumi. I'm going to butcher his quote, but it's something like, our job is not to seek for love. Our job is to peel back the barriers that separate us from our love. And so, if we're seeking for love and we don't seem to be able to find it, try peeling back the things that are causing you suffering. Try peeling back the things that are in the way. And underneath that, you will find love every single time.
That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. And on that note, where can all the listeners find your work? How can they contact you?
So a couple different ways. My website is jenmadrone.com, and I have some offerings there. I have some free resources. I have some sound healing meditations. And then I also have a YouTube channel. So I've done hundreds of videos on the awakening process. And so it's just Jen Madrone. So if you go to YouTube and put in Jen Madrone, and I think it's maybe officially called Watching the World Wake Up, but you'll find me there. I'm also, my book can be found on Amazon. So it's Uprising, Surviving and Thriving in a World That Is Waking Up. So I highly recommend that. It's also on Audible, so you can listen to it as well. It's on Kindle. And then I'm also on the socials on Instagram and Facebook. And so under Jen Madrone, you will be able to find me. And so feel free to reach out with any questions. If you need support through this process, please reach out to me, and be happy to talk with you.
Awesome. And lastly, where does the universe take you next?
That is an excellent question. I've been wondering that myself. Right now, it's taken me deep in my work with teaching the healing arts. So that's what I've been focusing on the most right now is teaching my healing arts classes, mostly locally, but there's another book inside of me. And so that other book is waiting to be birthed. And also it's taken me into nature, into walking my talk and really taking time for myself and slowing down is a lot of what's happening, that balance, making sure that I am slowing down so that I can hear what the universe is wanting from me next.
I love that. And on that note, it's been such a pleasure connecting with another fellow cosmic traveler. These conversations are always amazing, and I know that I get something out of this, and I know that there are a lot of people who will get something out of this as well. Yeah, and I highly recommend all these people, all you guys that are just waking up. This is the best survival guide that you're gonna get right now. So definitely check that out. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure to talk with you and to connect with you. And I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing and the information that you're spreading and the people that you're helping.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening in today.
Okay, thank you.
Oof, that conversation realigned my chakras and my attitude.
Adjustment confirmed. Frequencies are balanced.
Where to next, Arden?
To the temple of quiet knowing, where the heart speaks in whispers, and the soul remembers it was never lost, only waiting to be felt.